guys, my name's Miranda and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the unsolved case of Aliza Sherman. This is the case of Aliza Sherman, who was found fatally stabbed 11 times outside of her lawyer's office back in 2013. I saw this case on a TV show called Still a Mystery, and it's one that I had not really heard of before, one of the very few that I had not really heard of before, so I thought that I would bring it to you guys and hopefully maybe raise a little more awareness about it. Aliza was 53 years old and going through a divorce at the time of her murder. She was described as a loving, caring, and just a very strong individual. She always provided a safe and peaceful place for others, and she was just a very nurturing person. She was also very active in the Jewish community. Her parents were Holocaust survivors who met at a displaced persons camp, and they came to Cleveland in 1950 to try to give their children a better life. Aliza was accepted into CWRU's nursing program, but when she couldn't afford it, she decided to go to Huron Road Nursing Program instead. She also from time to time would attend Hillel events with other Jewish students on campus. And this is where she met Sanford Sherman. Aliza and Sanford fell in love, and 2 years later, in 1982, they got married. But their marriage was not without trouble. It is said that Sanford had two sides to him. At times, he was generous and gracious, and other times, he was tough and mean. They had 4 children together, the youngest being born in 1995. At this time, Aliza took a break from nursing and decided to stay home with her children. And like I said earlier, she was a very caring and loving, nurturing person, so she wanted her house to be the gathering place for her children and their friends. She always had everyone's favorite candy and snacks and just their favorite foods in general. But in 2004, things would take a turn for the worse. Sanford decided to retire from his ophthalmologist practice. According to court records, his office assistant quit after 18 years, and instead of training someone new, he decided to just close his practice. And it was at this time that Aliza decided to go back to nursing as an IVF nurse. And this really fit her well. Family meant a lot to her. She was very family oriented, and now she would be able to help others build their own families. And like I said before, their marriage was not without troubles. Eventually, Sanford admitted to having an affair from 2006 to 2010. And on June 20th, 2011, after almost 30 years of marriage, Aliza decided to file for divorce. By all accounts, it was unfortunately a very ugly and messy divorce that had been dragging on for almost 2 years. And just a few days before her court date for her divorce, she was fatally stabbed 11 times. On Sunday, March 24, 2013, she left to go run errands and told her son that she would be back with pizza. Her divorce lawyer, Gregory Moore, insisted that she come into the office to discuss the final preparations for the divorce. However, the meeting ended up being pushed back twice. So instead of meeting in the early afternoon, they were set to meet around 5 p.m. that evening. When she arrived, she was unable to enter the building, so she sent him a text. He then sent her a text back saying that he was in the office and he would be down shortly to get her. So she decides while she's waiting to huddle in the doorway to try and stay warm and stay out of the cold. Unfortunately, her lawyer never comes down to get her, and this is when she is stabbed 11 times. As the hours went by, her family grew increasingly worried as they could not get a hold of her and they hadn't heard from her. They tried calling her and texting her, but they never got a response. At around 9 p.m., her family received a phone call from the police asking for the family to all gather at Aliza's house and that they would meet them there. This is when the family gets the news of what happened to Aliza. The police tell her family that she was attacked outside of her lawyer's office while she was waiting to get into the building. The police said that she had wounds on her back, around her ears, and on her hands, which showed that she most likely put up some kind of a fight. A man in an office building nearby had heard screaming and rushed down to find Aliza. The man said that she had tried to say something to him, but he unfortunately couldn't understand what she was saying. He called 911 and she was rushed to the hospital, where she eventually passed away in the emergency room. Her family and friends were shocked by the news. Everyone was wondering who could have done this and why did they do it? And how could they have done this in broad daylight? The suspect had fled the scene and the police were looking for them, as well as any witnesses and the murder weapon. They looked in the direct area, on rooftops and garbage cans, as well as the Sherman residence. But they could never find the knife that was used by the suspect. None of the knives were missing from the residence, and the police were hoping that DNA was left at the scene by the suspect, but unfortunately the only DNA that was found was Aliza's, which they found very unusual that the suspect didn't leave any DNA. I also find that unusual because usually when there's a stabbing, there's at least some DNA left from the suspect because they usually accidentally cut themselves as well. So I find that very strange. However, one of the buildings did catch the suspect fleeing on video. The footage of the crime itself has not been released out of respect for the family, but you can find the video of the suspect fleeing. But although the police have this footage, it does not give them a whole lot to go on. The footage is grainy, and it's very hard to make out if the person is male or female because of the clothes that they're wearing. Their clothes are very dark and they are covered head to toe to where you can't really make out their identity at all. But the footage does show that the suspect ran up quickly to Aliza in order to surprise her, and that they did not attempt to steal anything, so it wasn't a robbery. They didn't take her purse, her keys, or her wallet. They didn't take anything, so it seemed to be something that was planned. Her family and friends have said that in the months leading up to her murder, Aliza had experienced some very scary, strange things. At one point, she had a brick or something similar that was thrown through her car window, and another time she had 2 tires that had been punctured by nails in the exact same place. In 2012, so about a year before her murder, she started receiving some anonymous threatening messages at work. So she was constantly nervous or afraid, and she didn't know who would be doing this to her. So the question is, did she know her killer? A few months after Aliza's murder, her daughter actually sued her father, Sanford, in a civil suit for stealing almost $2 million from her mother. Her daughter had actually distanced herself from Sanford prior to the murder because of how he had treated Aliza before the divorce and during the divorce. At this point, police and Aliza's friends find out some troubling information about her and Sanford's relationship. It turns out that Sanford was very controlling and they were fighting a lot. Police had actually responded to over 15 domestic disturbance calls in the years leading up to Aliza's murder. One allegedly was because of a fight over a game, but no charges were ever filed from any of the calls. In 2011, Aliza actually told an officer that Sanford had threatened to get her and that she was afraid and didn't feel safe at home with him anymore. Aliza was afraid of her own husband. She would often tell her friends that they didn't know what he was capable of. Before Aliza had filed for divorce, she had moved downstairs and put a bolt lock on the door. Again, this just shows how scared she was of Sanford. During a deposition in the civil suit, one of Sanford's friends, who happened to be a retired police officer, said that Sanford had asked him numerous times how to commit the perfect murder. The friend stated that he repeatedly asked him this. This friend also stated that he had told Sanford what his scenario would be. You don't use your own car because you don't want your car to be seen. Don't use a firearm because it can be heard. Wear something that would cover your entire body. In other words, don't wear your normal street clothes. Now, the thing about this information is that the suspect seemed to have followed these instructions to a T. So, did her husband do it? Or was that just a coincidence? If you remember, I mentioned Aliza's lawyer, Gregory Moore, never made it down to let her inside. So that caused investigators to wonder if maybe the meeting was a setup. Now, when I first saw her case on Still a Mystery, I really didn't think much of that. It wasn't until I started kind of digging into this case and really researching it more that I found this very sketchy. I think they just didn't talk about it a lot on the show, so it didn't make it seem like it was real fishy. But why did he keep changing up the time, and where was he when all of this was happening? Well, it turns out that he was not even at the building at the time. He had left about an hour prior to the murder and returned about an hour after. Now, police know this because they have used phone records and keycard records and witness statements to verify all of this. And he had lied about this to investigators. So why was he insisting Aliza come in to finalize her divorce when he wasn't even there? I don't know. One thing that I thought of is I remember back around this time period, there were apps that you could use if you knew someone's number, and you could pretend to be that person and text other people or call other people at least. I don't remember what the app that I'm thinking of was called, but I do remember doing prank calls. My friends and I would do prank calls this way. So could the suspect have used something like that? But even then, why would the lawyer lie about it to police? At this point, the case pretty much goes cold. But in January 2016, Gregory Moore is indicted on multiple different offenses. One being that he lied to police in Aliza's case.
News tonight in the 3-year-old cold case of Aliza Sherman. A grand jury indicted her divorce attorney, Gregory Moore, for tampering with evidence.
And John Cossack live with details of the just released indictment.
Yeah, Chris and Lee, we just received this 9-page indictment. Gregory Moore is accused of tampering with evidence and making false statements just a day after Aliza Sherman was killed outside of his office in downtown Cleveland. The indictment reveals Moore lied to police about where he was around the time of Sherman's murder on March 24, 2013. Moore stated he was in his office when Sherman was murdered, but phone records tell a different story. The indictment indicates Moore was not in his office an hour before the murder and didn't return until an hour after she was killed. But text messages sent by Moore suggest he was in his office waiting for her.
But he also called in bomb threats to courthouses that were supposed to be hearing his cases because he was unprepared. Like, what? That just shows how sketchy and suspicious he really is. But he was sentenced to 6 months in jail, and the police hoped that he would help them find Aliza's killer, but he refused to cooperate with police. And then in August 2016, Sanford paid $110,000 to settle the civil suit with his daughter. She decided to release him from any future claims unless he is ever charged in any way with Aliza's murder. And to me, that right there speaks volumes. That just shows how suspicious he is. Recently, in 2021, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations, or BCI, took over the case. Aliza's daughter and family are continuing to raise awareness and keep this case out there. There is a Justice for Aliza Facebook page that I will link down below in the description if you want to go check that out. Also, Danielle Howland, a true crime YouTuber, I encourage you to go check her out as well. So let's talk about the theories. So obviously the main theory is her soon-to-be ex-husband, Sanford. They were in the middle of a messy divorce, and there was a lot of turmoil going on even before the divorce. He seemed to not be a very nice guy, is what it sounds like. And then he also repeatedly asked his retired police officer friend how to commit the perfect murder. And then the suspect did just that. So to me, that's very suspicious. So to me, that makes me lean more towards him. Okay, then there's Gregory Moore, the lawyer. He lied to police about where he was and sent Aliza misleading texts to try and get her to his office. And then he also refused to cooperate with investigators in any way. He wouldn't talk to them or anything. But however, I just don't see him being the suspect, but anything's possible. Then the one that's not really talked about, I think I saw it on one source that I read, is Sanford's mistress. But since they aren't sure if the suspect is male or female, I think that you could definitely put that as a possibility. And if you really watch the surveillance video, it almost kind of looks like it's a woman running away, just by the way that they're running. And that doesn't mean anything, but there's that. So I just thought I'd put that one in there. I personally really think it was the husband, or the husband had someone do it for him. That's what I think. This family has gone through so much trauma because of this tragic event, and my heart truly goes out to them. Hopefully the BCI can get some more information and hopefully solve this case. So on that note, I'm going to go. Let me know what you think about this case down in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you have not already. I will see you next time. Bye.